If you would like to support the podcast and get some extra content while you're there, head on over to patreon.com/SevereMMA podcast and sign up. From the rewatch to the Q&A, we will have loads of content every week. So sign up, patreon.com/SevereMMA podcast. And now, here's the podcast. Welcome everybody. It's episode 398 of the Severe MMA podcast. We are back. Happy New Year to everybody. My name is Sean Sheehan, aka Shawnee Podcasts, joined today by the Sally March of Irish MMA Media. And you know what? We have an awful lot to talk about today, guys. The first main proper podcast of the year, although we've had the bold predictions, some of which have nearly already come true. I'm doing better than last year already. We had the awards and all that, so hopefully all of that content went down well and everyone enjoyed all of that content. But we're back to talking about the weekly grind in MMA, and I suppose there's a lot to talk about this week, so let's get into it. Before we do all that, we must say 1, 2, 3 Happy New Year from our friends over at Manscaped. The ball is officially dropped, but that doesn't mean you have to drop the ball on your balls in 2023. Whether you had a New Year's kiss or not, the leaders in below the waist grooming have got you covered for your much needed resolution of bringing a sexy back. Join the 7 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped with our exclusive offer if you go to manscaped.com and use the promo code SevereMMA, SEVEREMMA, for 20% off and free shipping. Let us have a toast for a new year, a new you, and a new you with no pubes. So Manscaped are absolutely brilliant. They're absolutely brilliant. They're the global leaders, as I said, in below the waist grooming. And this year, take your package to the next level with their Performance Package 4.0. In it, you have the Lawnmower 4.0, which has the advanced skin safe technology. That's for down below now, for shaving down there. It's a 4000K LED spotlight that will shine up the promised land in 2023. After that, you can use the Crop Preserver and Crop Reviver, which are basically deodorant for the balls. So they're absolutely brilliant. I use them all the time. Whenever you're going on a trip away or anything like that, those are the bikes to bring with you. They're absolutely fantastic. And if you want something to bring them in, they have the Shed travel bag, which you could throw them into your normal travel bag. And the Manscaped also in that package have the anti-chafing boxer briefs, which are free gifts, and they can all be stored comfortably in that Shed travel bag. If you really want to make 2023 the better year to remember, though, make sure to try out Manscaped's Wet Good as well. They include the Ultra Premium Body Wash 2-in-1 shampoo, which I have got there in the last couple of weeks, and I absolutely love, and the body deodorant as well. That body deodorant, that lasts you a long time because you only need 1 or 2 sprays of it and it'll last you for so long. It's absolutely brilliant. These products are absolutely perfect follow-up for your New Year's gym session. So cheers to the new balls in 2023. Get 20% off and free shipping with the code SevereMMA at manscaped.com. Manscaped.com. That's 20% off with free shipping at manscaped.com and use the code SevereMMA. Time to feel sexy and free this 2023 with Manscaped. Right, Graeme, let's get into it. I suppose, as I said, we've a lot to digest, a lot to talk about from the what day have we? The 15 days of January so far. It feels like it's been about 15 years with all that has happened. We have kind of a list of things here, so we're going to go through some of them. First of all, though, Graeme, did you miss MMA? We were gone from it now for a good while. We haven't recorded the SevereMMA podcast in probably maybe not a month, but around that. We did ones to keep us going and stuff. Did you miss it? Like, were you yearning for MMA? Were you yearning to watch fights while you were away for the month?
No, not really. I was kind of happy to take a little bit of a break. I didn't really watch or listen to that much stuff. I saw like little bits. I was on holiday as well, which kind of helps as well, distract yourself. But no, I wasn't like on a Saturday night missing the UFC events. Although, I think probably in the past maybe I would have, but I just think we have so many shows now. We've talked about this a lot, and the UFC isn't a must watch. You kind of cordon off that weekend every 2 or 3 weeks and make sure you're there for it. And if you miss it, you're missing a lot. Now you can kind of you can catch up even if there is UFC events on. You can catch up on a lot of them. So I think that must watch kind of feel has been gone now for the last few years. I think that's pretty. Yeah. inevitable with the amount of shows and the model that they've gone to, the model that Dana White always made fun of, the boxing model where, it's like a main fight and a bunch of nobodies, the way he used to phrase it. And, and now the UFC sometimes doesn't even have the main event to bring the eyes and the big hype and stuff like that. So, yeah, it's definitely understandable from the monetary sense from the UFC and with the ESPN deal and all that. But for the UFC being an unmissable event, every the pay-per-views, even like sometimes now people don't even know they're on, and it's just become too much. And I know this has been talked about to death, but if the UFC, if the UFC want to get back to that, they're going to have to stack these. They're going to have to stack these pay-per-view cards and make the pay-per-views like something you can't miss. And the pay-per-views are definitely better than the average fight night cards, but sometimes the standard just isn't up to what it used to be. And there's also the fact that there's like other sports going on and people want to go out, and it's just a different, it's the whole different atmosphere around these UFC fights. I think in general, like I used to have friends looking to come over and watch them, and now like people just they might watch them at home or watch them back or whatever, but people aren't as excited about these cards because the cards aren't as exciting.
Yeah, it's interesting because I have certain things like wrestling as well. I don't really watch it much anymore, but I kind of listen to podcasts and listen to people talk back about it. And I'm sure there's a lot of people who are tuning in here who haven't even seen the fights, who are maybe wanting to get the results off of us and things like that. And I just thought it was an interesting thing because we've kind of been gone for a while, and for my own personal, and it's interesting to you saying that, like, I very rarely get time off just because I have to do stuff every week. But I was able to get a few days off over the Christmas, and I must say I did not miss it. To be honest, now is that I didn't miss it, or I was glad of the break? Probably more the glad of the break than anything else. But I will say one thing: like sometimes you forget about your love for the actual sport because. Last week I was doing, it'll be out next week, but during this week in the last 4 or 5 days, I was doing my preview for KSW, and there was a few fighters on that I hadn't really seen before, and I went back and I watched a few of their fights, and I actually really enjoyed watching their fights. Do you know when we've often talked about that, but when there's like a break between cards, and there rarely ever is now, but we always say, you need that to like build up the card, to build the anticipation. God, I never felt that as much as I felt the recent, because I really enjoyed watching those fights, building up for the card next week. And I've come into this year in a very positive mindset with MMA in terms of the fight itself. Now, the outside of it, it's very hard to be positive about it, but I hope to continue that for another while, but it's very, very hard. Although coming up in 2 weeks' time, there's no fights. There's literally nothing. There's like no UFC, no Bellator, I think there might be a PFL Challenger, but not really much. So maybe that's good to kind of bring us into February here, and we're not going to be overwhelmed with it. And there's a really good card coming up next week as well. So, okay, we didn't miss it that much altogether, but maybe this is a good way to be. Like, I don't know, those New Year's Eve shows as well. I'm just like, I can't watch them. It's just like, no, this is not your time. This is my time. This is not MMA time. I didn't see the Cage Warriors one. I didn't see the Bellator one. I'm not going to watch them. It's like, I think, and I think that has helped me love MMA again a little bit, and the sport itself, maybe, or the fights itself, maybe not everything outside of the sport. And I think that maybe that's needed. So that's probably a yearly thing now. Don't be putting on any cards around the Christmas time, lads. I'm not watching them. They can fake off. But yeah, as I said, I didn't miss them that much, but I'm glad. I'm really looking forward to the card next week, and I'm really looking forward to some of the big fights that are coming up. So we'll
just on that before you move on, do you think they should have come back with this pay-per-view, a big card, a big kind of comeback,
do you know what,
get things rolling again? I think they should have.
I was just thinking that when you were speaking there, right? And if they had, I think we probably would have spent the last maybe 10 days preparing for it, and there would have been pieces coming out and podcasts coming out and all. The fact that they had this card first that we saw last night, I think we were...
for the media maybe, but for the general kind of MMA sphere and the fans and stuff.
I think look, if it was for the fans, it would. Look, there's two ways of looking at it. I think in general, the anticipation would have built and built and built and built, but also I think this kind of eases us in a little bit back into MMA. We actually got that break, and now we've the big card next week. Like, I don't think too many people, even us here today, we'll spend a few minutes on the card because there's so many other things to talk about. But I think a lot of people, fans especially, weren't concentrating on that card between, it was supposed to be Gastelum and Imavov, turned out to be Strickland and Imavov. They weren't concentrating on it too much, so they actually have an extra week nearly of a break and are getting into the pay-per-view next week, and I'm sure that'll be built up and they'll be mad looking forward to that. So I think it's okay, and I think it'll work out well. But it'll be interesting. It'll be interesting to see the anticipation that builds for next week, because it is a very, very good pay-per-view. Let's talk about some of the news. So look, the biggest, there's probably 2 or 3 massive stories. The one we'll talk about first here, because we'll talk about Dana White and the slap and everything in due course. We've talked about that. Myself and Harry did a podcast. Myself and Ian did a podcast. But we will speak about it again because it's something that needs to be spoken about. But the breaking news last night, the massive breaking news, the world's UFC undisputed heavyweight champion, Francis Ngannou, was released from the UFC. They will not try to match. They will not try to sign him back. UFC were kind of forced to release this news because I think it was a T-Mobile Arena put up a big banner outside the arena with John Jones versus Cyril Gane for, I think it's March 4th, UFC 285. Pictures circulated of that very quickly, obviously. And in the UFC, Dana White was forced to kind of announce it afterwards, and he explained all the situation with Francis and on. Now he says that Francis didn't want to fight.
Sounds like Francis, all right.
Yeah, sounds like they didn't want to fight.
A fucking fight dodger anyway. He just won't fight anybody, that lad.
He just wants, he wants to fight fucking, what's the name of that lad from Team Rhino again? The heavyweight. What was his name? Carl. He was going to shoot pigeons.
Oh, Carl Roach.
Carl Roach. Yeah, he just wants to fight Carl Roach But yeah, Dana White said he didn't want to fight the competition. He said he offered him the biggest heavyweight contract of all time, more than what Brock Lesnar would have been on. Note, he said heavyweight contract. He's definitely not paying him more than Conor McGregor, I don't think, anyway. So I think that was an interesting note. And Francis, I suppose, moves off into the sunset to fight wherever he will want to fight. Graeme, my first thoughts on this, right, are twofold. I'll give you my second thought first, I suppose. My second thought is fair play to Francis. He said he was going to do this. He said it wasn't about the money. He said it was about the principle. He said he wanted to be a free man. He wanted to be able to box. He wanted to be able to do whatever he wanted. He wanted to be an actual independent contractor. And if he didn't get that, no matter how much money they offered him, and it seemingly was good money, he would not take it. And he hasn't. So fair play to someone for sticking to their morals, sticking to their beliefs, and refusing to give up on them at all costs, right? So I must say that, fair play to him. I've 100% admiration for that. My first thought then was, fuck. Because
yeah, fuck's sake.
Who is Francis Ngannou going to fight? I'm thinking about it, like there's a few options out there. I suppose Ryan Bader or Fedor, they're fighting here in a couple of weeks' time, the winner of that. Exactly. Yeah. And it's only Malyakin over in one championship. Now, that actually wouldn't be a bad fight. He's pretty good, but Francis is bigger and stronger and hits really, really hard. So, and it wouldn't be like the name I think a lot of people would know. You go over to PFL, you have Bruno Capiloza, who's very, very good. But like, would he beat Francis? I don't think so. You have the other lads, they've had a good season at heavyweight. Like,
and if he does lose to one of those, Francis does lose to one of those, what does he do from there? Like,
that's it. And then I suppose you have boxing or bare knuckle FC. I hate bare knuckle with a passion. I just hope that doesn't happen. And in boxing, like, who is he going to box? Like, Tyson Fury is the big money boxing match, I suppose, but he's going to fight Usyk now, and then he'll have someone after that. He'll have Joshua. He was just, he was just kind of carrying Francis along. And now the fact that Francis isn't the heavyweight champion anymore, and there will probably be a new heavyweight champion by the time he's even talking about fighting again. Like, does he have the same leverage? Will he be able to earn the same amount of money? I just don't know. So, like, I hope he does, and I hope his thing pays off and all. I just don't really see the option out there. Like, it's pretty clear, and I've said it for a long time, that Tyson Fury just used him to basically say, oh, this is my next option. I'm going to fight him. I don't have to fight Joshua or Wilder back in the day, whoever it was. Gain himself a bit of leverage, use Francis's name, and Francis played along, you know, to Tyson Fury's tune, I suppose, and we saw where it went. Like Francis did parlay that into a big offer by the sounds of things, but then he didn't take the offer, and now he's, you know, it's all well and good, as you said, sticking to your morals and all, but like Dana White holds a grudge, and like what's out there, as you said, not much. If he goes into boxing, I know he's got big power and all that, but like if he goes in against one of the top guys, I don't see it going well at all. It's a bizarre move all around. Like, you know, the UFC, obviously, I know why they're doing it, but, you know, like even really, if he does, the heavyweight champion of the world, you know, people will move on and forget about it. But Francis is like, you know, a scary looking guy, big, muscly, has an unbelievable backstory. He's kind of perfect, really. Like, and he could have become a bigger star and in the UFC, and now that's all gone down the fucking the gutter. And now we're talking about who the fuck's he going to fight, and if he does fight, it doesn't really. If he fights any of these guys you mentioned, the fight's not going to matter, and if he loses, then he's fucked, even worse. So. Yeah. It's just we need to get Cole Conrad back. It's the only solution. We do. Like, there is one solution, and I'm not sure if he's
Jardeep Singh.
That's the one. But, Brock
play the music.
Brock Lesnar's the one. Like, is he still under contract with the UFC? If he's not, and they could manage to make that fight somewhere, that would be absolutely massive. Absolutely massive. But I don't think that's a thing that's possible. The thing I would say about boxing, right? Even if he does, let's say he fights, Tyson Fury fights in the next fight, and he wants kind of a warm-up fight or whatever.
Bobby Lashley, is he still going? Is he still in WWE?
He is. He just came back there recently. But like, if he gets one boxing match, he's only going to get one boxing match, right? And okay, he might earn a lot of money from it. He might earn like 3 million, 5 million or whatever. But what's he going to do after that? Like, where does he go after that? Is he just going to go back to the UFC? Maybe they will take him back after one boxing match. But if he loses, that's not going to end. He will lose. He's not going to get a second contract
if he has to come crawling back. You can guarantee that.
It's... I don't know. It's just a bizarre situation. Now, you'd hope there is something concrete there. You'd hope there is a big offer. Maybe it is from one championship. Maybe it is from Bellator. Scott Coker put out a thing last night again saying that he'd be interested in signing him. Of course he would. But do Bellator have enough money to sign him? Like, PFL seem to have a lot of money. Do they have enough money to sign him, same with one championship?
You know, he must have some kind of big offer on the table if he's turning down, like, if we can believe Dana White, which sounds ridiculous, that he was offering more than Lesnar or whatever got. So yeah, Ngannou must have some pretty like close to concrete offers on the table if he's turning down that, like, you know, all about like morals and all, but this is prize fighting. He's 36, which isn't that old for heavyweight, but you know, couple of bad fights go your way, you lose your chin a bit, and you could be kind of finished at the top level. So like, MMA is a rough game, and maybe he wants to make money now while he can and all that. So turning down that money, he must have some kind of big offer on the table. But like, you know, I hope he does, but I don't know what's going to happen. It's definitely a worrying time as if you're a fan of Francis Ngannou. And
it's a weird one as well because it's at heavyweight, and I mentioned some of the possible people he could fight there, and obviously, you know, maybe the Brock one, but Brock's probably still under contract with the UFC, so that's probably not even possible. But like Malyak, I know a lot of people like him, and it is a good fight. I'd watch that fight. I'd watch any of the fights, but there's none of them stick out to be big, massive fights. Like, you even see during the week AJ McKee re-signed with Bellator when, you know, there was obviously talks over the last couple of years that we'd love to see him in the UFC and all this, and even Dana White said it at one stage. I think everyone's probably a little bit disappointed, but still, you're going to see AJ McKee possibly fight against Usman or Magomedov. You're going to see him fight against Patricky, I think, coming up. You might see him fight against Patricio again if he goes back down, or if Patricio comes back up. You know, you'll probably see him fight against Mansour Benoit, whose name I always fuck up. So there is really good fights out there for someone like that. Or let's say Amanda Nunes left, she could fight, say, Kayla or Cyborg again, or, you know, even if say Izzy left, he could fight against Mousasi or Eblin or Fabian Edwards. There's good fights out there, fun fights for all of them, and in lots of different divisions, even shitty ones like middleweight. But for Francis at heavyweight, it just, and because he's such a level above, like if Derek Lewis left or someone like that, I think there'd be good fights out there for him. He could get him. Derek Lewis versus Bader would be a fun fight and all that. But for Francis, the very top of the top, it isn't. Like the top of the top is Gane in that rematch. It is John Jones. It is Stipe in the trilogy or whoever is coming up. It doesn't seem, and there's some good, not to say there isn't good people outside of the UFC at heavyweight, because there damn sure is, but on Francis's level, I don't think so. So look, I hope
there's definitely no fights that are there that are like legacy defining, like John Jones, beating John Jones would have been, or going out there and 5-6 title defenses as heavyweight champion, never been done before, never come close, stuff like that. That stuff's now out the window, you know what I mean? Unless, as you said, he takes one boxing match and the UFC accept him back or whatever, but that seems unlikely to me in the near future. But yeah, it's definitely a shocking turn of events in my opinion. I thought all the stuff's playing out in public. It's just negotiation back and forth, trying to get the deal done. It'll get done in the end because of the lack of options for Francis outside. But yeah, I'm hoping, as I said, that there's some kind of big offer on the table there, and he can make a lot of money and help out his family and friends or whatever, generational wealth, as they say. But yeah, I'm yet to be convinced that this is the correct move. And as you said at the start, like, fair play, sticking to your principles and all, but sometimes pride can get in the way.
Indeed, like you would think that this would be the big money fight. This would be the fight.
I'm not defending the UFC or anything.
No.
I'm all for the fighters getting paid more, but I just this is the thing about, I'm worried about Francis won't get paid more, won't get paid even close to what he would be making if he had a signed lucrative deal with the UFC,
or gets paid once and never again. I think that's probably a bigger issue, because look, I hope he does. I really, really hope he does. I hope he gets paid $5 million for his next 5 fights in a row. It'll be actually,
maybe he's sick of this shit. Maybe he just wants 1 or 2 more huge fights, loads of money, and get the fuck out of there. Maybe that's what he's thinking. Fighters retiring earlier than before. Maybe that's it. Maybe he's been through enough shit in his life and he doesn't need this shit. But yeah, unless it's that, then yeah, I don't know about this move at all.
Indeed. Let's talk about John Jones versus Cecilia Gane. I suppose we'll be talking a lot about it over the next while. But to me, even above, and I've said this isn't just because Francis is gone or whatever. I'm not drawing the UFC line here or anything, but that's the fight to me. That's the best fight in the world you can make in MMA. And it's funny, we did over in Sherdog, we did this thing. Fights we want to see.
It's the best fight you can make, but maybe this fight could be pretty boring.
Do you think so?
Could be. Yeah, it could be. Like, the Francis John Jones one, I think, had less chance of being boring, and it's kind of like more of a clash of styles and things like that. But I could see this being very cagey. I don't know, like, you never really know what to expect from John Jones and how much effort he's going to put in, how much camp, how much extracurricular activities he's going to engage in before the fight and things like that. So there's definitely a lot of questions there, but like, I could see a world where this comes out and this fight isn't one for the ages, like maybe on paper it seems.
I think it'll probably be 5 tactical rounds, if I'm being honest. But like,
and will people be, oh, this is brilliant, we finally got the super fight? People will be like, this was fucking shit. Yeah, that could happen. I think that's
maybe
large enough possibility.
I don't know. I don't think it will, though, to be honest. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong, man. I'm usually on your side of things like this. We've seen it with Adesanya a lot recently. But the difference between, I think, a lot of those fights and this fight is, this is the apex of MMA. This is, in my opinion, the best heavyweight in the world. I like that fight against Ngannou.
Fuck you, Francis, you're all news.
It was a very close fight, and I think Gane is going to improve and get better after that. And I think if he's not the best, he's up there. And John Jones, probably the second or third, fourth, maybe greatest fighter of all time. Some people think the first. So this is the apex of MMA, and like, when we see a close fight at that, I have no problem with it, like, and I think a lot of people will understand it. A lot of people will be excited by it. And I just think it's going to be such high level stuff. I'm really excited. I'm also interested to see how John Jones looks. He's not only has he been 3 years out, before that, it felt like not necessarily the game was passing him by, but that he needed to adjust to the new wave, I suppose, of MMA. And if he fights a points fighting only match against Cyril Gane, he's going to be in big trouble here, because Cyril can do that better than anyone. Plus, he has that heavyweight size and power, and he can move really fast. Now, maybe Jones wrestles and things like that. We can talk. Obviously, we can break down the fight as it goes. But God Almighty, this fight, this is everything you would want in MMA. Like, it really is. I absolutely can't wait for it. So I suppose every cloud has a silver lining. But yeah, this is the one for me. And it's what a massive fight it is for the UFC as well, because if John Jones becomes their heavyweight champion, he's been out for nearly 3 years or whatever it is, I'm sure he'll be raring to go again as quickly as he possibly could. So you could have, and they have agreed a new 8-fight contract with John Jones as well. Dana White announced that last night. You could have John Jones now having a good few fights a year, especially if he gets through the first couple of opponents, because I think once you get through Cyril, if you do beat him, and once you get through maybe Stipe, there isn't a lot coming after that. there really isn't. Now there's a few. Don't get me wrong, but I think it'll be a good time for John Jones if he can get through the first two, and a big time for the UFC. So it's interesting. We'll see how I suppose we'll see how that goes, and we'll see how what way the cookie crumbles over the next while with that.
But it is great to have John Jones back, and like as I said, there's loads of questions around him, but that makes it even more interesting to me. You know, has John Jones just been coasting in these other fights because the opponents, you know, didn't light a fire under him? He won loads of title fights at light heavyweight, and maybe that was part of it, or maybe he's just not quite as good as he was, or maybe the years of partying and all that stuff has taken its toll on him, or maybe his heart just isn't in it anymore. You know, there's loads and loads of questions around him, and you don't want to come out kind of half-arsing it against somebody like Cyril, and if he does, it could be a really bad comeback for him. 3 years coming back is not easy. Like, how long has he actually been? How much time of the 3 years out has he actually been spending in the gym working on his MMA? It all came very easy to John Jones throughout his career, just beating everybody with ease, and going out there and taking down Daniel Cormier in the first round, and after a camp he didn't really take fully seriously and all that. So hopefully he comes, if John Jones comes out ready to prove himself as the best to ever do it and all that stuff, with that attitude and with that work ethic put in the gym and all that stuff, like, this could be a really exciting run. But I'll have to with John Jones, you just have to wait and see. That's the ideal thing. We'd love to see, can he still get back to the top and be as dominant as he was when he first broke through, and do it with such ease, or has the game passed him by a bit, like you said, or you mentioned as a possibility? So I think, for me, the most interesting part of all of this, even though it's an unbelievable matchup, is John Jones' side of things, and how he's going to look, and what his mindset is, and what actions he takes, and is he taking this seriously, and all that stuff. That's what's really interesting to me, even though obviously the fight is really interesting too.
100%. I'm really looking forward to seeing that, and I think you're absolutely right. Can John Jones be the same? Not even be the same. He needs to be better, I think, because if he's the same as he was in his last two fights, Cyril Gane will beat him. He absolutely will. So John Jones needs to come back with no ring rust and be better. So it's a big task, but there probably isn't anyone you would bet on being up to it as much as you'd probably bet on John Jones. So let's see how that works out. Let's move on, Graeme, and let's talk about this Dana White situation. I'm sure everyone has heard about it now. We've done a couple of podcasts about it. Obviously, in the turn of the new year, Dana White was involved in an altercation with his wife, where they were in a nightclub. He kind of grabbed her hand. She slapped him. He slapped her back once. He slapped her back twice, and then kind of walked her down as the video was kind of shutting off or being unwatchable, I suppose. And look, we've seen all the fallout since then, which there really hasn't been much of, to be honest. He almost before the video was released was on TMZ talking about it, laughing and joking with the presenters who were trying their absolute best to...
Oh, that was the fucking worst. That was ridiculous. Fucking whatever media or journalist or whatever, they were like, sure, you had a few drinks, you probably don't remember anything, or just trying to give... Even Dana was actually, Dana did a terrible thing. I was brought up, or most people in most decent people are brought up, you never hit a woman. Like a man is, meant to walk away and all that stuff, and you should never hit a woman, even if she hits you first and all that. And Dana's there actually trying to say,
Dana tried,
excuse. And they're like, oh, why, you were drunk and you were, they were basically just trying to give excuses. It was just like, I was actually fucking cringing watching these guys. Like, how do they fucking look at themselves in the mirror? Like, fucking hell, like, Jesus, what are these guys doing? It's just that, like, maybe that was orchestrated fully by Dana, but the UFC or whatever. But I think those guys are just trying to keep that relationship so bad, just brown nosing so bad in the situation, and just absolutely disgusting look by them. And that was annoying as well. Like, the guys, they're trying to say there's no excuses and apologize or whatever, and you're trying to like make them, or you're trying to like feed excuses to them. And sorry, go on. I just wanted to interrupt and say that.
No, you're absolutely correct. I was going to say the same thing. The thing about Dana is, well, in the first, say, 2 times he spoke, which would have been that interview, and he did a press conference during the week. When you read what he said, he's actually saying kind of all the right things, and which he should. And some people go and they look for excuses. In fairness, he hasn't looked for an excuse. He has said, I will be staying with this for the rest of my life. I should never have done it. My kids are going to look at me and all of this, but then you actually go and you look at him, right? And you look at the interviews. The TMZ one wasn't Dana. It was them, as you just very well explained there, Graeme. The second one, it felt like Dana, he was almost trying to fight back a little bit, right? While still saying the right things. But then last night, a few people asked him about it again, and he was like, why are you asking me about it? And he didn't say it, but you could see it in his face. Like, why are you asking me about this? Refusing kind of to answer questions. Not refusing to answer questions, but giving one-word answers and answering questions that he wasn't even asked and stuff. It feels like we have gone 2 weeks, and then Dana White is already in a place where he's like, that's gone.
Yeah, well,
that's
to me, that media kind of conference he called was like, okay, we're going to talk about this now for 10 minutes or 15 minutes or whatever, exactly. And then we're not going to talk about it again. That was the purpose of that, not to like re-apologize. And another weird thing he said, and that was, or a few weird things, but he said, oh, nobody comes back from that or whatever. And he's like, I still believe that. It's like, but I'm not going to punish myself because it's going to like harm the company or something. It's like,
exactly.
Jesus Christ. And he's like, I have to live with this. That's my punishment. I have to like people like looking at me differently and the shame or whatever. It's like, if I steal $1 million, I don't get to like keep the money and no punishment.
Thief, Graeme.
I have to live with myself with my $1 million.
It's ridiculous. One of the most ridiculous. You see all the fighters absolutely taking the piss out of him, like Ali Quinta saying he wasn't able to get bonuses for 3 fights in a row for something, and I think it was Ramsey Nimjan saying that he was out for 2 years because he smoked weed. I shouldn't have got the 2 years as a ban. I should have just had to live with being a weed smoker for the rest of my life.
The shame
of it. It's one of the most ridiculous things.
There's definitely like, obviously that the examples, our examples are slightly in jest and it's different. Like you definitely live with shame, but like people do bad things and they feel ashamed and it haunts them or whatever. It eats up at them and they still have to serve a punishment. And Dana White definitely had a publicly different attitude with other guys. His statements in the past, his punishments in the past show that he was like, he had talked publicly about you never hit a woman and stuff like this. And, that's obviously we don't know what happened behind the scenes. He says he never did it before, but, either way, you did it and you did it on camera and by your own logic and your own statements in the past. I know Dana White, don't believe his lies or whatever, but it is a bad look. And the fact that Endeavor and UFC didn't come out or the parent company didn't come out and make even a statement when it happened is definitely a bad look. Come out with some bullshit statement like most companies do, but don't just ignore it. That's the whole thing was handled. The whole situation, Dana's fucking did the terrible thing. The whole thing was handled terribly, and the TMZ people were terrible and just an absolute clusterfuck.
Yeah, I think just 2 last points on that. What could you have done? Could you have come on and go, right, here is £1 million, I'm going to donate it to a woman's shelter or, something like that? Could you have done that? Would that have helped? Would that have been a thing? Now, throwing money at a situation isn't the answer, but it would have helped. It would have been a thing you could have done, right? You could have said, like, I'm going to speak to people about this. I'm going to try to educate myself better. I'm going to try to be a better person. Even if someone else isn't giving you a punishment, right? You could have done something like that. But also, this thing about This, if you had said, right, I'm dealing with my family, you know, they're not giving me a punishment. You'll have to ask Endeavour, you'll have to ask Disney about the punishment or whatever, and just moved on from it. But the fact is, he said there, like, as you said there, sorry, about his comment about this is going to harm the fighters and all of that. What absolute bullshit, right? And it's bullshit because
this whole ship will go down without me. So, like, I'm saving you by being here.
But they never do anything to help the fighters. If you cared about the fucking fighters, you'd pay them all more money. If you really cared about, you know, protecting the fighters and all and giving them what they wanted and doing what's best for them, you'd allow Francis to go and have a boxing match and come back and get his 8 million or whatever it is.
Well, I think Dana's chance to do all that
Nonsense.
has passed. I don't think he's in as much control as maybe people think he is, and you know, the investors and Endeavour, the people probably making a lot of the decisions. So like Dana had his chance in the past that he could have done this, he didn't do it, and now I think it's out of his hands to a large extent. But yeah, besides that, I obviously agree with you. Yeah,
it's ridiculous. But as you say, I agree with what you said there. But he's making out like he can. Like you look in Bellator, Scott Coker allowed MVP to have that bare knuckle fight and come back. He allowed Cyborg to go and box, and I don't see how Cyborg's out of contract or whatever situation. But he's allowed it to happen. He's allowed people doing things. Dana White would never do that. Like, he doesn't give a shit about the fighters. He does not give a shit about them. And to use that as a fucking explanation, just absolute a load of bullshit, right, from a fucking horrible human being. And like, I think the thing about this as well, and the point I've made from the start is so everyone can make a mistake, right? Everyone can make a mistake. And your thoughts when someone makes a mistake like that are, do they deserve, has their past shown that they deserve your understanding? And I think for Dana White, absolutely not. Absolutely not. Everything he has shown in, you know, okay, not to go full Kevin Aioli, he's done some good stuff, absolutely. But Dana White cares about Dana White. He's a known liar. He's done really bad stuff down through the years, and he doesn't deserve it. And especially as well, in the incident itself, when you hit someone once, it can be a mistake. It can be a heat of the moment. You can immediately go, oh no, what the fuck? When you do it twice and go after someone
like,
again,
the thing that
shows such a arrogant man.
Was he wasn't like shocked at himself when like, if you get hit in the face and you hit back, maybe that could happen in like the fucking split second. Then you'd be like, oh fuck, what the fuck?
Yeah.
Like maybe that could be like, you know, just a reflex or something like that. You know, I'm not justifying if that happens or whatever, but that's it's a little bit different than how it looked here, where he kind of went after the grabber. I'm not sure, like, I saw a really grainy version of the video. I don't know. I didn't actually see a second slap. I saw him kind of go grab, but maybe that was a slap and I just fucking missed it.
No,
I wasn't watching it over and over again, but he definitely went at her again. He didn't slap her and be like, oh fuck, what have I done?
Yeah.
Which was a sign to me that like,
that was the worst sign. Yeah, that was absolutely the worst sign. And as well, his bodyguard was there and didn't. Imagine if someone slapped Dana White, right? What would the bodyguard do? You know, it just
maybe
felt like it was so normal.
That's kind of not really evidence, in my opinion, because
but it's evidence that it's kind of normal.
A guy who's not gonna, if Dana did anything, he wouldn't fucking get involved because he's afraid of him or something, or needs this job really badly and doesn't want to. You know what I mean? Something could be going on there behind the scenes. So like that could be a bit, like obviously a little pieces add up to a bigger picture, but that one I would kind of shy away from a bit and go like the one where he kind of went after her. It wasn't like he was going after her to apologize. In my opinion, it looked like he was going at her aggressively.
Yeah, without a shadow of a doubt. And like, I just the fact that he's so Teflon and getting away with it, absolutely. Obviously, you know, she came out immediately and said it's a family matter and all, so there's going to be no legal proceedings or anything like that. No anything from his employees, and he is an employee. None of that. And even a lot of people coming out backing him up. Now, there wasn't as many people coming out backing him up as I thought there would be, honestly. So that's a good sign, I suppose. But there was some, and even he said himself to don't do that. But like, this is a thing I think that Dana, because there has been no punishment, because he has done nothing, I think this is a question that keeps needing to be asked. And it was weird last night as well. John Jones is someone who was involved in a similar sort of incident recently. The fight was announced last night. Okay, maybe give the people the benefit of the doubt who were covering it. That's a question that needs to be asked to Dana White as well. It's like, John Jones is an alleged domestic abuser or whatever it might be. how do you feel about promoting him as yourself a known domestic abuser? That's a question that probably needs to be asked to Dana White. You might get thrown out of a fucking press conference for it.
Dana's just going to reply like, "Oh, it's alleged. We'll let the courts." He's just going to fob it off.
I don't think he is. I think that's the type of good incendiary question that'll make Dana White fucking mad, which you should be probably doing if you're sitting in that chair. That's your job. Like, that is your job to.
Yeah, but even like I was going to say, even if you do ask a question that he's not going to answer, it's good to have it kind of asked on the record or whatever.
Yeah, 100%. All right, we'll move on from that. Look, there's been loads of crazy stuff that's happened throughout the last while as well. There was ex-UFC fighter Chris Carrizosa was involved in a really bad domestic violence situation as well. Phil Baroni, Jesus, looks really awful. He is alleged to have murdered his girlfriend in a really insane situation. I saw a lot of people coming out talking about how Phil Baroni has not been in a good place for the last few years, and that he's probably suffering
Josh Barnett,
and stuff.
Who's kind of a no-nonsense guy coming out and Twitter and saying that he used to be close to him, friends with him. When he saw him the last few years, he was like a different person, completely out of control. Like, I'm paraphrasing massively here, but yeah, that sounds like brain damage, or maybe it's not. Maybe he's just out of control for other reasons, like substances, stuff like that. Probably doesn't help, but some of these guys who are in a lot of wars and stuff, we might be unfortunately seeing more of this going forward, which is a really, really sad thing. We see it in the NFL, sometimes as well, and stuff like that. But yeah, it's obviously a really, really sad situation. And if these guys did it, and when it looks like there's a lot of evidence for it, I've seen in the Brownie one anyway. But it's sad that their loved ones are getting the blunt of their kind of punishment they've taken. It seems like, maybe I'm wrong, or maybe it's nothing to do with CTE, but I'd be surprised personally if the CTE wasn't playing at least some factor in this kind of thing.
Yeah, 100%. Even if it's not, like, the mental side of being retired or whatever. Like Sean Strickland said it last night afterwards. Stephen Bonner obviously passing away was another horrible thing that's happening last night. Sean Strickland said it last night. Like, these guys are released from their contract and they're never thought of again, and whether it's from the fans or whether it's from the UFC and all that. Now it should, and from this point that I'm about to make, it's from the UFC and Bellator and everywhere, that there should be some sort of aftercare for these people. They should be allowed, like, even if it's okay, you can come to the UFC PI if you've had more than 5 fights in the UFC, and we have a psychologist here, we have medical people that you can come and you can talk to, and allow that for life if you have had a few fights in the UFC, or maybe 10 fights or whatever it is in the UFC. But if you have given something to the UFC, I feel like it's for life, those brain cells that you have given. So what they should be giving you back is something for life as well, and they have plenty of money to do it, and they should be doing that. And like, is that going to stop all of these incidents happening throughout the years, as you said, with the NFL and all? Absolutely not. But if it prevented one, wouldn't it be fucking great? If it prevented 2 or 3, or this is something that really needs to happen. This is something that the UFC especially needs to be held to account over, and it's something that has to be improved upon. Like, even if it's CTE and brain health and all of that, absolutely, that's tantamount. But also just the mental health and keeping people on the straight and narrow, so that things like this don't build up and up and up over time, and something like this happens. It's absolutely tragic. It's absolutely tragic. All of these different incidents we just spoke about, like, they're connected in a way, and it's so tragic. It's so sad that all of these things have happened. And obviously we'll mention again Stephen Bonner, Graeme. We'll probably do a career retrospective on him at some stage, but a guy that was from Tough One, one of the most important fights in the history of mixed martial arts, seemed like a real fun guy, and it seemed like a wacky guy down through the years, even going into Bellator in the past, but always put on fun fights. I suppose like the tarnish people would have on him that he failed the drugs test, but he was gone out of MMA at that stage. He was going pro wrestling.
Yeah, he was pro wrestling, and he got a late call as a replacement or something. I wouldn't like, that's not the same as other PED failures, in my opinion.
Yeah. What did you think of Stephen Bonner down through the years? He was always a guy I had great respect for and admired as a fighter. He always put on fun fights, didn't he?
I think, like, obviously he's a legend because of that Forrest Griffin fight that kind of, got the second season of Tough and got the UFC kind of going. And in a lot of ways, maybe, something else would have happened and they would have got there in the end. But the way the story played out, that was a huge pivotal moment, and he'll always be remembered for that. He may not have been the best fighter, technically, or, the most exciting, but as you said, he always kind of gave his all in the cage. And back when in his kind of initial run in the UFC, that got you a long way. That obviously was exciting for the fans and stuff like that. And maybe when he went on to fight the technicians like Anderson Silva, we saw what happened. But even the John Jones fight, there was definitely a level. But you don't have to be the best fighter in the world to be like have a huge impact on the UFC, which he obviously did. And it's sad. So many fighters, in bad situations after, and dying young, like Stephan Bonner, kind of out of nowhere. It wasn't even, maybe if other fighters died, you might kind of half see it coming. But Stephan Bonner was kind of a bolt out of the blue, and obviously the respect people have for him came out, and everybody's kind of reminiscing over the good days. But another kind of sad ending to a great career, and it seems like a very influential career anyway. And it seems like this is happening kind of far too often. Like we were talking about bad incidents with fighters there a few minutes ago, and now like fighters dying young is another thing that we can probably we'll probably have to get used to, unfortunately.
Victoria Lee as well passed away, only 18 years of age.
Yeah, fucking hell.
Details obviously haven't come out on that as well, and the family are asking to respect that they don't want the details to come out, so we'll absolutely do that as well. But God almighty, that might be the saddest of them all. 18 years of age. Everyone talked about her being the next big thing over in one championship, and you see the Lee family with Angela in massive fights and Christian in massive fights. It's so sad. 18 years of age with your whole life, your whole career in front of you and all. God almighty, it's like, do you think there should be, like, I don't know, like, this is unrelated in a lot of ways, but do you think there should be an age limit of, like, competing? Like, is it at a high level in MMA? Is there like a lot of pressure? Is there like, your brain is still developing and you're getting hit in the brain? Is there like, a study that needs to go into this? Like, I know if somebody's ready, like, I don't want to like be holding them back from being, making money and being the champion or being, a contender or whatever. But it seems like there should be some kind of study there, but I don't know. I seem like I'm being very negative or talking about negative things on this podcast. It depends on the person. Like, let's say you look at soccer. Look at Wayne Rooney. Like, at 16 years of age, that guy was ready to, he was one of the best players in the world at 16. You look at a guy, say, like Jadon Sancho, signed for Man United now, and he's struggled badly since he came to Man United, for a multitude of different reasons. He's had to have a reset, and he's like 21, 22 years of age. It depends on the person, I suppose. But I if not a ban, then like some serious care given to those people. Really, there should be. I know, as you said, not connected to any of these, but yeah, like, it just feels all around in MMA. We just don't have enough care for these fighters. We do, as the big organization. Like, if you're fighting in an organization like the UFC or Bellator or One Championship, there should be more care put into these people, and it's, I know it's an individual sport, and it's, they're going to be going back to their gym in Hawaii or Dublin or New York or LA or wherever they are, and they're not necessarily connected to the UFC or One Championship or Bellator, like, Wayne Rooney was connected to Everton, or Jadon Sancho to Man United, or Nunes to Liverpool, or whoever it might be. It is a very different, but that is something that this sport, and myself and Harry have talked about in Speaker's Corner many times now at this stage, it needs to get better at. We need to be more centralised sport, and the UFC have started that with the UFC PI, and I give them all the credit in the world for that, but that needs to be pushed on. There needs to be more of that, I think. And look, we live on the world of the web now. Why can't you do these things over Zoom or whatever? And I you know what, I really think if every MMA organisation in the world had two, psychologists or psychotherapists, whatever they're called, employed full time, and their job 5 days a week was to, have half an hour sessions or hour sessions or whatever with every fighter on the roster or every fighter on the roster that wanted it, geez, wouldn't that be a great thing for minimal cost, you know? And I really think that's something that really could improve MMA. And as I said, unconnected to all of this, but yeah, it's and not only for the fighters that are on the roster, but the fighters that used to fight on the roster as well. But you know, I don't know. Sometimes with that sort of thing,
you think as long as they're private contractors, there's just no pressure or no,
onus on the UFC to do it.
Yeah, no onus on the UFC to do it. Like I know the union isn't possible with contractors, but you could some kind of association, whatever, some kind of bargaining pack, and just like basic things like some kind of like healthcare after 3 fights, 5 fights in the UFC or something. Maybe not necessarily 1 fight or something. They can come to some agreement. I'm sure an agreement could be reached with the UFC. That's maybe it won't be as good as it should be or anywhere near that, but it'll be something definitely better than what it is now. Obviously, there's a lot of big egos, big personalities and stuff, but maybe the gyms are going to have to come together and form some kind of association, like the major 10 gyms or the major 12 gyms, because we've tried it with fighters and things like that, and it's not working. Obviously, it takes a lot of effort, and it's probably, if history is anything to go by, it's probably going to fail, and maybe people don't want to put in a lot of like hard work and time if it's something that might not work or whatever, but it would be huge for the fighters if collectively if they could get some kind of bargaining entity to bargain with the UFC. Like obviously it's it's going to take a lot of work, and you might not be, some gyms hate each other or whatever, but for the good of the fighters, maybe there can be some kind of agreement come to, and some figurehead can be chosen that everybody likes, or it's possible to do it, I think, and there should be a concerted, like, decent effort made at doing it, at least, even if it doesn't work. There's probably a better idea than the gyms coming together or whatever, but there should be at least a round table done where they throw ideas and try to make it happen, because as long as there's no pressure on the UFC, there's no onus on the UFC, it's not going to fucking happen out of fucking thin air.
Yeah, 100%. Like, it's a conversation, as I said, we've had in Speaker's Corner, but I think that everyone needs to be having this conversation an awful lot more. And, these are the important things. We often talk about judging and we talk about other things, and people act like that's the biggest problem in MMA, but things like these are the fucking biggest problems in MMA, and things that can't be solved, right? And it's just because something can't be solved don't mean we can't try anyway, or try to do something to make it slightly better. And I think a few of the ideas thrown out, it definitely could. But look, we'll see if it happens. But one thing for sure, we'll keep talking about it here and on Speaker's Corner and other places as well, because it's massively important. Let's move on. If any questions as well, I'll be recording on Tuesday, I think, the Q&A this week. So throw them over there, and I will answer any of them over on patreon.com/SevereMMA podcast. 2 things before we get into the fights from last night, Graeme. The awards, our awards came out. Generally, I think it was a good reaction. What was your reaction to the reaction? I suppose there was 1 or 2 like messages and people maybe not understanding some of our awards and things, but in general, I think the awards, I think we got them right, and especially the Irish ones. I was happy enough with how they come. What did you think of it?
Yeah, well, I was on holiday, obviously, so I wasn't online as much as I usually would be. But I happened to see a few positives and a few negatives. But that's always to be expected. People have allegiances or are fans of other fighters, other fights, other moments, other gyms, other whatever, amateurs, prospects, all that stuff. So yeah, obviously everybody's not going to agree with everything. But I think having, what do we have, 9 or 10 people vote. It spreads it out and makes kind of sure that even if it's an arguable one, that somebody who definitely didn't deserve it didn't win. I don't think we've ever given an award that turned out to be, or that we look at now and say, oh, that was wrong, like undeniably wrong or whatever. So obviously, opinions. Everybody has opinions, and people like to. Some people bringing up things like, oh, but in jiu-jitsu or in this and in that, and this gym didn't do well or whatever. It's nothing to do with MMA. So it's a lot of the kind of the backlash over that was basically misplaced and kind of misunderstanding what the award was and things like that. So yeah, I think, you know, the winners that we got were all the worthy winners, and there's some, you know, in the Irish MMA awards, there's some exciting times coming for these fighters like Lee Hammond and Ian Gary and people like that. Like, we need these guys to you know, be in big fights and fulfill some of their promise, and to keep Irish MMA going, and to keep the kind of not rebirth, but the kind of, what would you say, the
re-up after you know, the Joe Carvalho thing, you know,
and Corona and the shows not being on and stuff. It definitely hit a speed bump there, and we're kind of going again, and we need these guys to kind of, you know, make things happen, and hopefully they will. And, you know, obviously it'd be great to have Conor come back in the UFC and things like that, but the next generation is really important as well. And, you know, the amateurs seems to be going very well. The amateur team seems to be going very well. These guys are looking to turning pro now. It's an exciting time. Obviously, the Old Triangle podcast break that down much more than we do, and, you know, it's good to shine light on them and join their journeys before they kind of get to the Cage Warriors, the Bellators, the PFLs, and obviously like things like the UFC. And yeah, I think it's an exciting time for the kind of next generation of Irish MMA.
100%.
Sorry, I went on a bit of a tangent there off the awards, but yeah, right, I think Irish MMA is definitely on its way up, and hopefully, you know, people like Lee Hammond, who won one of our awards, hopefully it'll be a breakout year for some of them, and hopefully we'll see more you know, Irish fighters on the big show and on PFL and UFC and things like that.
And that's obviously, we have PFL was announced going to be in Ireland. We'll talk a lot about that over the next while. That's going to be in December the 8th. We have Bellator coming up here in 6 or 7 weeks' time. We have Cage Warriors in a few weeks after that as well. And, you know, there'll probably be a second Bellator show. So great times ahead for Irish MMA. And I think as well with our Irish MMA awards, our main ones, the spread over the last few years has been great. You know, from Kikyo from CMAC winning our amateur fighter of the year this year, to obviously Ian Gary, who came up through Team KF, to where you know, he is now over with Renegade, but also over in Florida as well, to, you know, SBG winning Gym of the Year this year, FAI winning Gym of the Year last year, and, you know, Norman Park has won Fighter of the Year, and Conor McGregor has won it, and you know, Leah McCourt has won her Female Fighter of the Year, and Sinead Cavan obviously won it this year as well. So I think there's been a great spread throughout, and I'm happy that's the case as well, because everyone deserves to be you know, to be recognised as well. I was thinking of one for next year. Maybe we could have Irish MMA Fight of the Year, because I was looking at that Reece McKee Burlington fight, and I was thinking that really needed to be told. That's another thing. Maybe that's what we bring in for next year, because I think that'd be good. But I like, the one problem I think a lot of people had was we voted SBG Ireland as the Gym of the Year, and I can look. I can see why people are saying, SPG, you know, they've had a lot of losses, or they're not, you know, they underachieve maybe or something like that. But also, like, these awards, and any awards, I think, in MMA should be high achievement. And, like, there's no doubt about it that the most high achieving gym in Ireland is SPG Ireland. You know, last year it was FAI because they won 2 Cage Warrior titles, which was unprecedented, which was a really, really big thing, and they deserve to win it. SPG this year, if you look at Will Fleury won the UAE Warriors title, you know, Richie Smullen had the title. Our amateur fighter, our prospect of the year was Lee Hammond. Sinead Kavanagh was our female fighter of the year. Carol Moore won against a ranked fighter in Bellator. Like, there's no other gym in Ireland that have achieved any one of those things nearly. You know, apart from obviously Paul Hughes winning for FAI, winning the Cage Warriors belt, so he'd be up there at one of them. But what SPG have probably 5 of those sort of things that are, you know, very, very high level. So, and there's more as well that obviously I haven't talked about there. What's your man's name again? I always forget his name. The Canadian,
Brad Katona.
Brad Katona, yeah, he's the champion as well over in isn't Brave, isn't it, as well? So, like, there's lots of things as well. And Johnny Walker obviously fighting out of there as well, winning fights in the UFC. Like, I think if you look at it and be unbiased, and we have to be unbiased, we can't say, oh, you know, we like Team KF or we like Rhino, we like all of these people and all of these gyms. We can't just give it to them because we like them. You have to look at it in the facts, and there's 10 people voting as well. And, you know, I think I don't think we got it right. It was 100%. There's no doubt about it that they were the Gym of the Year, without a shadow of a doubt. And I think all the other Irish awards as well, I think they were all correct. I think Shauna Bannon a little bit unlucky because she won so many fights, but who won the highest level fight of the year, without a doubt, Sinead Kavanagh beating Leah McCourt, a ranked fighter in the world. I think she deserved to win. Lee Hammond looked absolutely fantastic. There's another few people there as well going for that. And obviously, the amateurs had a great year as well. So Keith Kyo was a worthy winner, but Bradshaw could have won it, and a few others as well could have won that. Conor McCarthy, I have a great time for him. I think he's very, very good as well. So there's lots of people as well, but obviously we talked about that. So, but the reaction to that, Jake Paul, Graeme. We have had like a no Jake Paul rule on this podcast over the last couple of years.
Hold on, before you go on, I saw his video, did Nate Diaz say anything? I forgot to check. Did Nate Diaz reply to the thing about boxing? And he put up
a picture of Risen. that was kind of it. So no, I haven't heard. Maybe he did, but I haven't heard it. So Jake Paul has signed with PFL. And he said he's going to go into their pay-per-view series or whatever that is. He's going to fight in MMA. Then he called out Nathan Diaz for a boxing match, which would be followed by an MMA fight, which I'm like, no. You box him, you're just going to fuck off and you're not going to have the MMA fight, are you? Especially if you lose, which I think Jake Paul is a good boxer. I think he probably...
But he can't do it the other way either, though, can he? Like, he's going to go in there and get fucking murked in an MMA cage and then try to sell a boxing match.
Yeah, but you have the boxing match, you win that. Then there's your one-on-one and you can put a trilogy on. Maybe you could still do that if it's the other way around. But like, I don't know your thoughts.
But he's thinking about the money though, isn't he? Surely, yeah. Like Jake Paul, he's doing all of this for money.
I don't think he's going to fight in MMA. You know, unless, and I tweeted this a while back. Do you know the way he's fighting old MMA?
He can hand select whoever he wants. You know what I mean?
Fight an old boxer in MMA. That's the only way he's going to get a win. If he goes in there against any sort of real MMA fighter at all, he's going to get absolutely destroyed. Look at what happened to Clarissa Shields. Like, he's just not going to be able to beat any sort of MMA fighter of any. Like, imagine Will Fleury is signed to the European Series. Imagine what Will Fleury would do to him.
There's absolutely no way he'd even contemplate fighting somebody who's actually an accomplished, like, ranked, up and coming actual fighter.
Like Nate would destroy him, wouldn't he?
Yeah, obviously.
Yeah. So I don't know what he's going to do. I hope he fights at MMA. I think it'd be really fun. I'd have a lot of respect for him if he did. As I said, he's a good boxer, and I've gained a bit of respect for him in terms of his ability. I still hate this YouTube boxing shit. I think he's kind of got past that a little bit, but he still has obviously a lot to prove, and I'm very skeptical about whether he fights at MMA or not. But we shall. I suppose we shall wait and see. Any additional thoughts on that, Graeme, before we move on?
Yeah, well, like, if he does, step in the MMA cage, I will have respect for him. Even, he's a bit of a joke in my mind at this stage, and I think he's just saying whatever he thinks will, get him attention, and it's working really well, and fair play to him and all that. But if he comes in even against somebody who isn't Nate Diaz, somebody who's an actual MMA fighter and steps in the cage and even gets destroyed, I'll have respect for him. Maybe if he looks as bad as CM Punk, it might be only a little bit of respect. But he goes in there and holds his own. He wrestled in college. He can throw a punch and stuff like that. If he goes in there and puts on a blood and guts fight and loses or whatever, or gets finished or whatever, I definitely still have respect for him. I wouldn't be laughing at him. I'd say a lot of people maybe are waiting for him to lose so they can laugh at him. I wouldn't be like that, but yeah, I still think he's just trying to get attention and just talking shit to get himself attention, and I'd be on your side where he probably won't be in an MMA cage anytime soon.
Yeah. Let's talk about the fights from last night. We're only an hour and 3 minutes into the podcast here. We're finally getting to the fights from last night. But obviously, Spencer did a recap of this over on SevereMMA.com, and the takeaways will be back this Tuesday morning as well, with Spencer and Harry giving a full breakdown of all of these fights. But me and Graeme will touch on a bit of them here. I suppose from the undercard, Charles Johnson looked very good against Jimmy Flick, especially when he got on top. The end of the fight looked really good with his controlled ground and pound. I always love to see a guy like that who can kind of give someone enough room to move a little bit, but also land those shots, those little accurate shots inside, and he ended up getting the finish there. So that was good stuff. Alan Nascimento, you could probably say the same thing about him in terms of his jiu-jitsu, where he was able to get the fight on the ground and was able to get the back very, very quickly. The standing rear naked choke is obviously a thing that's always... It just feels like it's such a precipice you're standing on, because if you don't tap, if you're caught in that, you're just going to like fall and everyone's going to get fucking knocked out, and it's just so weird. But he ended up getting the tap anyway, and before that Dan Argueta defeated Nick Gore via decision, as did Matthias Rebecki against Nick Fiore. Abdul Razak Al Hassan absolutely shut the lights out on Claudio Ribeiro with a few big shots, as he does every few fights. And then we got to, I suppose, the big fights of the night. Javid Basharat. Do you know what? I was watching this fight back. I got up and I watched the co-main event and the main event last night, and I watched back a few of the fights afterwards. Basharat, you know, and this is a wild thing for me to say, he reminded me a little bit of John Jones in this fight, and I'll tell you for why. Because Mendoza came out in the first round and he was kind of taking him down and he was wrestling him, and then in the second round Basharat turned around, he started wrestling him, he started getting on top, and he won the fight where Mendoza was trying to win the fight. And that to me is a great sign for how well-rounded a guy is. And Basharat just looks so well-rounded. I think maybe his striking still looked good last night, but you know, it was tough to look good in that fight. And he turned it around and he made his wrestling look good. He made his ground and pound look good as well. This was the type of fight where sometimes you see 15 minutes, like Ian Gary had in one of his fights. You need to see a guy over 15 minutes. You need to see if he can control a fight rather than just finish a fight very, very quickly. And I think Basharat proved that in this one. I was very impressed, and I continue to be impressed by Javid Basharat. Do you like him, Graeme? On 135?
It's like we always say, like, oh, this guy, he's 14, 15, 16 and 0 or whatever, or has a really good record, but we haven't really seen him tested. We haven't really seen, you know, a bit of adversity. We haven't seen him. Does he get tired as the fight go on? Are there any like kind of fatal, obvious flaws in his game? And you know, he got a good win. He'll have things to go back and work on. I don't know about the John Jones thing. I think the John Jones thing was more to kind of prove a point or to try to humiliate his opponent by beating them where they think he was going to.
That's true.
I think Basharat more made an adjustment to you know, make sure he won the fight and to out of kind of respect for his opponent, or even or just to confirm or to increase the likelihood of winning. I think it's a little bit different, but yeah, he definitely showed you know, wrinkles to his game that would have been questions before, but obviously there will be big step ups going forward, but it's definitely really promising signs.
I just saw a tweet there as you were talking. Do you know, they were mad at the T-Mobile Arena for releasing Gane versus John Jones. Someone tweeted that the T-Mobile Arena employee is like, here's my punishment. I have to live the rest of my life as labelled as the guy who leaked John Jones versus.
Nobody will look at them the same.
Nobody look at them the same either. Yeah, that should be his punishment. I like, isn't it funny that guy will probably get more punishment than Dana White got, which is a sad situation. Anyway, Umar Nurmagomedov then, God almighty, this guy, the left hook from hell. There was a few good left hooks in this card. I gave this as one of my bets of the week, plus 700 Graeme to get the knockout. It was only his second career knockout, but this has been coming. This guy can hit, he can kick as well. In one of his recent fights I was watching, and he was talking obviously about you know, Habib saying if his hands can become as good as his kicks, this guy is going to be a legitimate title contender. 16-0 now. I also gave him as one of my best for the year. I think it's 70-1 to be champion this year. I'm telling you, he wants to fight again on March 4th. I think if he gets a fight in and he wins, let's say against a top 5 guy, God almighty, it'll be hard to keep it'll be hard to keep him and that train from rolling. And Hani Barcelos is a very, very good fighter, so I was impressed.
He looked like he came with like an extra kind of point to prove, or maybe because Barcelos, I think, had beaten like one of the family or training partners or something.
No, he didn't beat him, but he went to a decision with Saeed Nurmagomedov a couple of years ago. So yeah. He beat Valiev though. Is Timur Valiev fighting with him? Maybe he is. Maybe I'm not sure.
But he seemed to have a bit more, you know, forward pressure to him and a bit more venom to him, even more than anything, Nurmagomedov than in previous fights. And you know, if he comes out with that kind of intensity and that kind of, you know, killer instinct when he did have him hurt there, like, you know, maybe your 70-1 bet isn't too far off. You know, I'd say the odds have already shifted in a lot. If you went to check them now, you're probably not getting anywhere near 70-1, but obviously there's a long way to go, and there's in terms of the upper echelon in the division, but yeah, very impressive UFC career so far. It looks to be improving. If he, you know, That's what, 3 finishes out of 4 fights. He's definitely going to be stepping up now next. He seems to have come out pretty untouched or pretty uninjured from that fight, so he could get a quick turnaround. Yeah, maybe this year will be a bit too soon, but he's definitely one to look out for future title contention anyway, by the looks of things.
Yeah, without a shadow of a doubt. Raquel Pennington and Ketlen Vieira then happened,
yeah, oh God, I don't even know how to score that because it was so boring.
Yeah,
hard to pay attention.
I kind of forwarded through it, if I'm being honest. Watching it back, when I saw it was a split decision, I'm like, no, do you know what? I don't need that hassle in my life.
You know, a fight's boring when you find yourself distracted, like doing something. Like you're just looking at your phone. Oh shit, this fight.
Oh, it's still on.
You'll be watching this.
But look, it's just terrible for the division as well, because Pennington obviously has been there at the top and fought for the title and stuff. Vieira was the one who you wanted to get to fight for the title, and that's the danger of putting on a fight like this. So it just takes away a contender, I suppose, and I don't know what's going to happen in that division, but I suppose we'll see. The next 2 fights then, I suppose, showed class, I think, and the 2 more classy fighters won in both of them. Roman Kopylov, this guy is very good. Like, I thought Soriano had a chance with his power, and he'll always have a chance because of his power, but Kopylov is just such a good fighter. He's like the jab. Everyone knows I love a jab, and the jab here was something else. Just absolutely, this wasn't a knockout, like this was a destruction. You just destroyed him over 8 minutes 19 seconds. Just absolutely took him apart piece by piece by piece. And you could somewhat say the same about Dan Ige against Damon Jackson, although he did get the big knockout in the end with the big left hook. I was very impressed with both of them. Very, very impressed. And 2 guys. Look, Dan Ige, I have so much respect for him, I forget he was in the Contender Series. That's how much I respect I have for him. And Kopylov at a middleweight, like, he's a guy who can rise through those ranks very, very quickly because of how poor middleweight is. So I'm interested. Imagine him versus Christian Nere Duncan. That'd be an interesting fight. I'd like to see that. But also, I'd like to see Punahele Arnie Soriano versus Christian Nere Duncan. I don't think that'd be bad. But anyway, main event, Sean Strickland versus Nasruddin Mavov. Strickland took it on short notice, went in and won the unanimous decision. It was, again, I think, a relatively close fight, as it tends to be with Sean Strickland. The first 3 rounds, I think, were... The first 2 rounds are very close. I think the 3rd round is close, but Strickland won it. I think Strickland won the 4th, and I think Imavov definitely won the 5th. I think all 3 judges gave Imavov the 5th. They gave all of them Strickland the 4th and the 3rd as well. They all gave Strickland the 1st, and they were split on the 2nd, which makes sense. The cards there. I think Strickland was the better fighter, and he deserved to win. Although it could have been close, because as I said, those first 2 rounds were close, but we've no judging controversy here anyway. I'll just quickly give you my thoughts on the fight here. My thoughts on the fight are actually very quick, because Imavov came out and did well. He did exactly what you need to do against Sean Strickland at the very start. He kicked the leg. He stopped him from getting forward pressure. He landed the left hook. Those are the most important things you need to do against Sean Strickland. But Strickland is a sparring master, I suppose. He loves sparring. He's not afraid to get hit, and he will get back into his game if he's taken out of it. Something which he did in this fight and Imavov couldn't do. The second Imavov pushed Strickland out of his game, Strickland stayed there, didn't panic, and in the space of literally about 3 minutes, got back into fighting his own game. Imavov then, for the next 22 minutes, was unable to get back into his game at almost any stretch in it. Even when he did win the 5th round, it wasn't his game. He was just kind of throwing more, putting himself in a little bit of danger, and ended up winning the fight, winning the round barely, I suppose. And I think that was really the winning and losing of this fight. Imavov couldn't put up with Strickland's pressure after that. When Strickland refused to kind of give in to him, that flying knee, or the knee up through the middle, was, or the head kick, like John Jones and Daniel Cormier, was there throughout the whole fight, and he never threw a knee once until the 5th round. And you could, and I was thinking this, is this just me? Maybe I'm wrong, but you could hear Dominic Cruz on the commentary on, he finally throws the knee. So he was obviously thinking the same thing as I was, and I'm sure many people thinking, it's like he's just letting Sean Strickland do a lot of these things which he's wide open for, and not paying him back. And it turned into Sean Strickland just being able to fight fight he's maybe more safe game without landing too hard or anything like that. And a big difference here as well is that Strickland's shots, the reaction Imavov had to them was way more than the reaction Strickland had to Imavov shots, because a lot of these rounds the scoring was very, very close. Like this would have been a fight if Imavov would have won it. It probably would have been like a bit of an anti-scoring one, because like the general goings of this fight were definitely in favour of Sean Strickland, and the impact that he had on his strikes was definitely more as well, and I think he won because of that, and rightly won because of that. But it wasn't a great fight. It was a light heavyweight fight, but it was 100% a middleweight fight, if you want to put it that way. And Sean Strickland deserved to win. What did you think of it, Graeme, overall?
Yeah, it was a Sean Strickland fight. He came in and did what he always does, and as you said, Imavov got going a couple of times in the first round, a couple of times in the second round, and then in the third and fourth, it seemed Strickland just had it all his own way. And then when it was already kind of too late on my card anyway, it kind of swung again in the fifth round. But I'm just it's hard for me to get excited about Sean Strickland in main events, because it just seems like a fight similar to this is going to happen, and it does, and it's just not. It shouldn't be on the top of a card, even these fight night cards, in my opinion. Maybe in the meritocracy of the rankings, or if it was a league, but it isn't. And you can put like more exciting fights than this at the top. A fight that you kind of know how it's going to look. You know who's probably going to win, and it's not going to be that exciting. It's just shouldn't be the main event, in my opinion.
It shouldn't be the main event? Yeah, well, what do you think should have been the main event on this card?
A different fight, like, obviously it was a short notice one or whatever, and maybe you can make an allowance for that one, but they've put Sean Strickland at the top of cards several times now. And I think, people are going to start avoiding cards that he's the main event, or they'll catch them later, or they're not going to go out of their way to watch them. And I don't know. I think Strickland kind of said himself afterwards, I fought like a pussy, I'm never going to do that again. But he's done it so many times that like he definitely is going to do it again.
Of course, you know what I mean? But they also, like, just because Sean Strickland talks and he says loads of stupid stuff, they think he's a draw. Like, the
numbers on this event, surely, like, they're getting the numbers. I'd be shocked if these were not below normal numbers for fight nights. I don't know, or it's a weird at most average.
Like, you have like the fifth best fighter in the worst division in the UFC. Like,
and if he was in Barnstormers or whatever, then fair enough, stick him on the top of the card, great. But he's not. He's not. He's just, and he's unlikely to ever be, no matter what he says. Like, we've heard this from him before. Oh, I'm going to go out there and put on a show, and he never is. Like, so yeah.
Fair play.
It's a sparring match, like,
came in. It looks like a
sparring match.
Came in a week's notice to replace Kelvin Gastelum, and
in fairness, I did say this is kind of maybe one you can excuse, but we've seen him at the top of cards kind of consistently now.
Yeah, that is true. All right, we will look. We'll have the preview show for UFC 283 during the week, and we'll talk about it in full there. There's KSW card coming up as well next week, which is a very, very good card all around. Kendall Grove and Michel Miterla is on top of that one, but watch out for Radoslav Pazuski in the co-main event. He's fighting Tommy Romanowski. This guy is one of the hardest power punchers I've ever fucking seen, and he's a big test against Romanowski. I think Romanowski will probably be favourite, but that's a fight I'd definitely be tuning in for. It's going to be very, very fun. But UFC 283 as well. My guy Jamahal Hill is taking on Glover Teixeira for the vacant UFC light heavyweight title, the quadrology. Shout out to Blake Harrison is going down. Davidson Figueiredo against Brandon Moreno. We've a Celtic clash between Paul Craig from Scotland and Ireland's own Johnny Walker. Jessica Andrade versus Johnny versus Lauren Murphy. Johnny Murphy. Gilbert Burns is taking on Neil Magny, so it's a really, really good card. Shogun Hua's retirement fight, allegedly. Terence McKinney is also on this card. My guy Gielton Almeida is fighting Shami on this card. Nicholas Dalby is fighting. This is actually really, really good. I'm looking forward to seeing this. Gregory Rodriguez always gone out there knocking people out. He's fighting an undefeated 9-0 guy in Bruno Ferreira. So really looking forward to it. But the top two, Graeme, Figueiredo versus Moreno, like the first three have been absolute classics. The fourth one, what do you expect from this? Who do you think will win?
I think I've probably said the same thing every time. It's a really tough one to call. it's probably going to be really close rounds. You know, maybe there could be a finish, and it'd probably be slightly more likely, in my opinion, that Moreno will get the finish. But I see this being really close rounds, a really close decision. Could go either way. It's a really tough one to call.
50-50, lads. Should be 50-50. I think
I don't know. Like, do you see a big advantage or a big,
do you know what? I probably need to go back and watch watch some of the other fights first. I remember when these things happen, I usually go back to my initial analysis of these fights. My initial analysis was Figueiredo early, Moreno late, maybe. And possibly that's what we should go back to here. Like Figueiredo, that power, it seems to have left him a little bit, I suppose. But when he's fighting a top level guy, it's hard to have that power where you're knocking guys out, early, especially at the lower weight classes. But I think, if I remember correctly, he adjusted in the most recent fight, and he fought a more tactical game, and it was a closer fight because of that. Maybe he gets more confidence, and his cardio was an issue as well. The weight cut is a big issue for him, and I'd be interested to see if that plays a part in it. But if it doesn't, and if he remember as well, Moreno has had a fight in between this, and Figueiredo hasn't. And if Figueiredo has spent a long time preparing for this, and as the weight is on point, the cardio is on point, and all of that, and if he can have more confidence, I suppose, in his hands early, that the cardio will last with it, it could be a tough night for Brandon Moreno. But Moreno has proven that he is a top level fighter over the last few years, and he's really good. It's going to be an epic fight again, I think, and I can't wait for it. And the main event, I really fancy Jamal Hill in the main event, if I'm being honest. Two of my favorite fighters in the world, honestly, in Glover Teixeira and Jamal Hill. I just think that Jamal will be able to keep it on the feet long enough to show his power, and that Glover is smart and intelligent and is really good at avoiding power. But I think Jamal's reflexes and his ability to stop the takedown, push that head down, be loose on the outside, let's say for the first 3 rounds. I think he's good cardio as well. His body type is, long and tall, and it's more of a cycler's body type than maybe a weightlifter or anything like that. I think that will actually be very helpful here against Glover Teixeira, because he can stay away, maybe tire Glover out a little bit, and then land those big shots. But never rule out Glover. Never. How'd you see that one going?
Yeah, I've always been a fan of watching Glover fight, and it's great to see him get to the top finally and all that stuff, and it's be huge for him to win it again here. But I think I have to agree with you. Probably it's a tough ask. Jamal Hill obviously hasn't been at this kind of stage before, and he's definitely, in my opinion, is a step up in competition from his last 4 fights anyway, 5 fights, all of his fights basically. And it's a big moment for him, and will he rise to the occasion, or will he, if things start going wrong a little bit in the fight, if Glover gets him down early on a well avoided punch or kick or something like that, or gets him against the cage and starts grinding his head stubble into him and making it dirty, and kind of using all of his experience, how will he react? Will he kind of rise to the moment or not? I think that's a big question here. If Jamal Hill isn't quite ready for this shot, then Glover could, make it happen. I wouldn't be surprised. But if Hill comes out and kind of shows all the potential that you've been talking about for years, I think, how many years ago did you start talking about him as a future champion? He could come out and do all that, and I expect he will, but there's definitely still questions there. And if he gets put on his back early, maybe it's a different fight. But as you said, it's probably more likely that he can keep it standing and get some shots off early. But yeah, Glover's definitely not to be underestimated at the same time, and I wouldn't be all that surprised if he did make it dirty and kind of slowly grind on him and win the rounds or get a ground and pound or a submission. But yeah, I think it's hard to pick Glover here, unfortunately, and his age definitely plays into that as well, and the fact that he's already, it probably doesn't mean as much to him as it would if he hadn't been to the top before.
100%, without a shadow of a doubt, and I'm looking forward to it. Can't wait. I think it'll be very, very good. So that's on next Saturday night on pay-per-view over in America and on BT Sports here in beautiful Ireland. All right, we'll leave it there. As I said, if we didn't mention anything, if we left anything out, feel free to send us in a question over on Patreon or get us at SevereMMApodcast@gmail.com. Big shout out to everyone as well for the last year. Coming up, even the last 2 months before Christmas, our numbers went up absolutely massively over on all the audio feeds, whether it's iTunes or SoundCloud or anything like that, and we really, really, really appreciate that. I think our numbers on SoundCloud went up by like 20% from last year. I think Spotify was closer to 40%, and iTunes was something similar as well. So the support is absolutely unbelievable. We really, really appreciate it. If you're listening to this as well and you're not subscribed, please do click that subscribe button, because I think I very rarely look at our analytics and all of that, but I think it's only like 40% of people, or less maybe even, who are listening to this are actually subscribed. So if you're listening, please click subscribe, whether it's, you know, on your Spotify or SoundCloud, your iTunes. Shout out to all our iTunes crew over there. You're very, very good. We got lots of listens over there. So yeah, please do that. It's free and all of that. And if you fancy more, patreon.com/SevereMMA podcast. We have a podcast every Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday morning. So 3 additional podcasts every week, at least 3 every week, and we usually have more as well. And then we have the early access to this podcast as well. So I think you will definitely enjoy that. Follow Graeme at SevereMMA, follow me at Sean Sheehan BA, follow the podcast Twitter at SevereMMA Pod, and follow us over on Instagram as well. We'd recently passed 2,000 followers on Instagram. Really appreciate it. I think it's at SevereMMA.com over there, Graeme, isn't it, on Instagram? So yeah, follow that, and you'll get a lot of good stuff over there. Now we leave it there, Graeme. Thanks everyone for listening. Graeme, inspirational quote for the start of the year. Give it to us.
Try to find me an executive position, but no matter how smooth I talk, they wouldn't listen to the fact that I was a genius.
We'll see you next Sunday, or Tuesday, or Wednesday, or whenever it is. Good luck.